Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Hello everyone, Callum here, All for United. We're going to have a quick chat this Sunday night about who you think's going to leave, who you think's going to come in. Obviously, there's a lot of deadwood in the team. A lot of players need to come into the squad. So what does everyone reckon? James, I'm going to start with you. Get straight into it tonight, shall we? James, obviously a few have left at the minute. A few contracts have been ran down. There's talk of other players being sold. Rangnick mentioned a while ago, he reckons about 10 will leave. And we'll need about 10 new ones. Can you see up to 10 leaving, do you reckon? Or do you reckon it'll be more? What players do you reckon will leave?
I think based on the sort of the window we're expecting of incomings, I think 10 leaving is unrealistic. I think 10 definitely need to leave. Don't get me wrong. 100%.
Well, 6 are already leaving.
Yeah, but I say if you with the squad towards the end of the season, especially, was light enough as it was. If you then get rid of 10 and only replace them with say 4 or 5 that we're expecting to come in, we're in the same position again. So I think realistically, you can't get rid of 10 unless we bring 10 in, obviously. But yeah, 10 has got to be the minimum. Looking at this squad, it's full of deadwood, and I know it's going to be a process of over a couple of years, but you just sort of want it to all happen now, don't you? You've got even players that are starting regular, like Alex Telles probably needs to go while we can still get a fee for him. We know Fred and McTominay probably both need to go, but that's a long way off. Look at attackers, there's probably a couple in there that could go. So, you can take your pick. There's money to be made this summer. If the United board are brave enough to do it, it's just whether you can still make a functioning squad. You need 25 players for a squad. Are we going to have 25 players if we get rid of 10 of them?
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that one. Mr. Ton, nice to have you on, mate. How's it going? What do you reckon? Can you see many more leaving? I mean, personally, I think I reckon we'll see about 10, 11 leave. Not necessarily first teamers or main players that you see a lot, but I do think we'll see 10 or 11 big earners or those who earn enough leaving to make a dent on replacing them and bringing them into the squad. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think there's going to be definitely a guaranteed of like 6 to 10. I definitely think that's the figure. What might also happen, what normally happens every year, season starts off, first couple games, 1 or 2 players see they're not, part of the starting 11, and they might say, I want a loan then, because especially it's a World Cup, they want to try and get into their national team. So you never know, there might be 1 or 2 extras. But I don't think we're going to do, like, if there's 10 goals, then we're going to get 10 players. I don't really see that happening. I see probably a figure, I reckon a guaranteed 4 at the moment. And then with the outgoings, when there will be outgoings, I reckon then we'll get up to the 6 mark of players coming in. I don't reckon there'll be much more than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see 10 coming in terms of transfers into the squad, as in buying players, but I reckon, what the Glazers will be like. They'll act like Van der Beek's a new signing and James Garner's
so that'll be 7, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Stu, what do you reckon, mate?
I think you'll get 3 signings tops, maybe 4 at a push. And then the rest will be...
Is that because of the Glazers, or is that because a particular reason?
It's all you can do. It's all you can do, Carly. If you start really pouncing about with the squad, you rip 10 or 12 players out of it and you replace it with 9, you ain't got a hope in hell in the Premier League of getting anywhere. So I think you'll see perhaps 3, maybe 4 max, depending on what he wants to do position-wise and who he wants to bring in, which of the loan players he's decided already that he's going to take a punt with. We already know he'll take a punt with Donny van der Beek. That's obvious. And so I think it'd be churlish to bring any more than 4 in. I would only bring 3, personally. I wouldn't upset the apple cart too much. I know the fans will want X, Y, and Z, but it just doesn't work like that. Modern day football doesn't operate that way. You can't sustain any kind of challenge with 8 players that go straight into the first team. It's just ludicrous. So as much as the fans want a raft of changes, I can't see it. If he's got any sense, Ten Hag, which I think he has, he'll limit it to 3, maybe 4 max, and that's certainly what I would do. With regards to shipping players out, the bulk of who I think he wants to go has already gone. Although reading reports that they wanted Mata to stay in a some kind of administrative role with the club. I would have kept Mata, but Mata obviously wanted to carry on playing for 2 years, so he'll probably end up at the MLS or perhaps Qatar, somewhere like that. United Arab Emirates, somewhere like that. But the likes of Jones, he hasn't gone yet. I don't know. You don't know what Ten Hag sees in some of these fringe players that we don't particularly like. It's a different, fresh pair of eyes. It's a different and fresh way of playing. Tuanzebe, he's played once for Napoli. Is he likely to come back in? If I was Tuanzebe, I'd come back in and reinvent myself as a right back. I've said it for months now. I think he'd be perfect as a right back because he's strong, he's powerful. He'd be a much better right back than a centre half. I think if, Donny van der Beek, he's already worked under Ten Hag, so they know each other. So I think you'll see a natural connection there. I wouldn't put it past Ten Hag to try and resurrect Martial's form as well, because when he's on his day, he's a very, very dangerous player. So there's a couple of players I think will come back in. I'm not so sure about Garner. I said the other week I'd ship him out to Brighton. I think that'll be a much better fit for him than Forest in the Premier League.
I actually made that point for you on Paddock the other day. If you noticed,
I did say that
the other day. I did wonder if you watched and noticed me say that. No, I mean, my point was though. Obviously, we know that there's many leaving, and Box has put this here. So you've got the first 6 in his comment. You've got Pogba, Lingard, Matic, Grant, and Cavani. They were all out of contract. Yeah. There's lots of talk about Pereira leaving and Tuanzebe leaving and Bailly leaving. That pushes us to 9. You've got then Wan-Bissaka, who a lot of people or Ten Hag are led to believe that he's not going to be his first choice, so he might be leaving this summer. That pushes us to 10. Martial and Chong. Now, obviously, Chong hasn't been here at all and has barely really featured for the first team too much. He's probably had a handful of appearances. But that would push us to what? I've lost count there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 12 there. Get rid of that comment and bring up his second one. Henderson, Jones, Tellez, and even maybe Williams. You're looking at up to 16 players in the squad. So that's obviously unrealistic. So if we just take that comment there, I reckon there's 12 players there. 10 of that list could easily leave. And I think if you got rid of that I think just the first 6 out of contract frees up 50 million quid in wages.
But don't forget, Carl. Don't forget though. You can forget Grant. You can take Grant off that list for a start. Tuanzebe, Pereira, Chong, and Boy.
It's still part of the wage bill, though, Stu.
I know, but what I'm saying is you can take 5 off the list that haven't seen anywhere near close to first team action. So you can just knock those on there. We're talking about potential first team players.
Yeah, the point was in terms of finances to help bring in new players.
Well,
that does become quite relevant, I think.
Somebody did some math the other day. Which I think 4 players, something like freed up almost like 50 million quid in potential transfer money. But it's just one of those, isn't it? I think it's, Chong isn't going to be on a chunk of money. Tuanzebe won't be on a chunk of money. Williams was on a decent amount, but I think he'll come back in, Williams. I think he's got a chance of starting Williams under Ten Hag. Very tenacious left back. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think he's got a chance of starting. Lee Grant's retired anyway, but he was only on something like 20 grand a week.
He was on 40 grand a week. He was on a sizable. This is the thing with United.
It's
the
kind of a
contracts
small
that they're on is quite a lot.
So
Steve, quick question, because there was a report. Well, the Athletics been consistent, and they get most of their briefings from the club, right? That they're looking at 5 players, Man United. Because obviously you said about 3. So how would you feel about that? Because you said that.
Just so you know, I work in the media. So does James.
Yeah.
I
know. I'm just saying, how would you feel about that? If that was the case,
5 players is way too much. 5 players is way too much. If you're going to bring in five first teamers, you can forget anything next year. Because it just won't work.
Stu, you say that, but you look at Chelsea 2 seasons ago. They spent nearly 300 million on 8 players and won the Champions League. That's decent. If you get the right players.
I'm very inclined to disagree with you, Stu. I mean,
Yeah,
bringing
I don't.
three
I
in
don't.
isn't
I
enough.
totally, I'm the
Well,
same.
hold on, lad. Before you start disagreeing, start thinking about it. Well, start thinking about it logically. Chelsea had a much better foundation of the first team that we've got.
Which,
Way much better of a foundation.
yeah, and they brought more players in. We have got a terrible first team, arguably. So surely we need more.
But you can't sprinkle five. If you look at what we've got, just say he doesn't mess around with the fullbacks, just say he doesn't mess around with the centre halves, and he ain't going to mess around with the goalkeeper, which I would. I'd remove the goalkeeper out of the equation. You've then got to look at the front six. So what do you do with the front six? So it's almost impossible to knit 5 good players into an average side. I've been there. I've seen it. I've seen it on a regular basis. You can look at there's hundreds of teams that have struggled to regenerate. Tottenham was one of it. When they spent the Gareth Bale money.
I agree with you, but there's a key ingredient we're forgetting here, right? I would totally agree with you if Ten Hag wasn't going after players that knows his system and knows the way he wants to play. Do you understand? So that speeds up the transition period. And I speculated this, and anyone that's in the Twitterverse knows that I predicted this was going to happen. I've said it on the channel before. I literally predicted that this was going to be the case. He was going to go after players that know his system, know the way he wants to play, because he's an ambitious man. So he's not going to want to, take time to try and get to that process. And
so I'd agree with that as well.
If that makes sense, what I'm saying to you.
I'd agree with that as well. But the problem is, none of them have had Premier League experience. If you look at Davy Klaassen over at Everton, he was wonderful for Ajax. He was woeful for Everton. Donny van der Beek, great for Ajax.
Yeah, but Klaassen's a different. The players that Ten Hag's going for, they're not of the Klaassen standards, man. It's different. I feel like I get what you're saying, but I'm not one of these big believers that's always the case for the Premier League. City go on by unknown players that's never played in the Prem, and they adjust well. Do you know what I mean? So.
But there's loads of examples of that as well, though. There's loads of examples of players coming from other leagues and not working in the Premier League.
Yeah,
there's loads of examples of them coming and absolutely taking the world by storm, coming to the Premier League.
Exactly.
Ultimately, it's, for a lot of players, it's always worth the risk. If managers, scouts, coaches always think they're good enough. I genuinely don't think if we're to bring 3 in, that'll be nowhere near enough. I think United do need 5 or 6, to be honest. And even if that isn't just for the first team, they need to be able to make an impact in the first team. I think that's the more important thing. It's like it's becoming a repeated issue so much that we're signing these players and they're not hitting the ground running at all. Whereas you see it at other clubs when they come in from other leagues and they're absolutely brilliant for them, and it's not happening consistently or enough for us at the minute.
I would still only bring 3 to 4 in, but I would bring 3 to 4, high quality footballers in, and I would bring as much Premier League experience in as I could.
Well, I've just seen a comment anyway, so I want to bring it up from Santa Notch. Good to see you, mate. I'm glad to see you watching the channel. What do you reckon of this comment? Because obviously Jones got offered a new contract a few years ago, because of our beloved Ed Woodward offering contracts to preserve value. And Martial was obviously offered a new contract not too long ago, both on quite big money. The only way these players leave Man United is if they're willing to take a pay cut, which I don't personally think either of them are. Do you reckon we'll see Martial and Jones here? I know Phil Jones isn't looking to, if we're to believe Romano, he's not looking to leave this summer. I've not heard much on Martial, but I think it's going to be one of them. Big contracts being handed out to those that didn't deserve it from someone that was so out of his depth is going to continue to bite us in the arse because of Ed Woodward, even now. What do you reckon of this? James, I'll go to you first because Mr. Tom's gone.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's this problem we have every season with shifting players and being hamstrung by their wages. But you look at other teams, like there's a comment about sort of how many players City have shifted and stuff like that. You can't imagine that anyone buying players off City is able to give them a competitive wage compared to what City are paying them. So it must be doable. And I understand we have a completely inept board at getting rid of players and even buying them, but it shouldn't be impossible. And you'd like to hope with this complete structural reset that we're having, that someone in there is all right at selling players. I think it's not impossible. You might have to twist a few arms, this, that, and the other. Just say pay a percentage of their wage just to get them off. But I don't. It's frustrating because it's going to be hard. Obviously, we put ourselves in an awful position, but I really don't think it's as impossible as we ourselves have made it seem.
Well, before I go to you, Stu, on this, I've just saw a really good comment, and I think it's quite relevant to what we're talking about in terms of the squad sort of resetting. A few years ago, when Guardiola came into City, he sacked off players. So it's just as a comment here, the likes of Hart, Zabaleta, Kolarov, Sanya. Me and you, Stu, have spoke loads and loads about De Gea. And I think the stats have backed us up quite a lot to show that I don't personally think he's good enough for Man United anymore. Do you think it's one of the priorities for Ten Hag to come in and say, do you know what, De Gea, you need to be replaced, goodbye? Or do you think the rest of the squad is so much out of it at the moment that we can sort of brush that problem to the side for now, let De Gea stay in net and just see how it goes? I personally think doing something like that would actually be really beneficial, but obviously we're not Man City, we need to do things our own way kind of thing. So what do you reckon, mate?
I'd like him to move De Gea on for sure, because I quite like the AC Milan keeper. I can't. James.
That mean you were one person.
James will probably be able to pronounce his name for him because I can't. Manye or something along those lines.
Yeah, Mike. That's it.
Mike. Yeah, I think he's a great keeper. I like him. He's a young keeper, but he's absolutely transformed AC Milan this season. Completely transformed their back line. And I've been going on and so you kind of months and months and months how much a goalkeeper who commands his box is a good shot stopper, because he's both, this kid.
I hate it when people I really hate it when people call goalkeepers good shot stoppers. It's literally the first part of the job.
Well, it is, but but he's a
Honestly,
commanding goalkeeper. He's a commanding goalkeeper as well as a shot stopper. My point is, he's a more all-round keeper than De Gea, but he's very good with his feet. And if Ten Hag's looking to utilise a goalkeeper that's good with his feet and start the play from the back, then this kid is absolutely superb at it. It'd be a brilliant signing for us, but it won't happen. He won't look at the goalkeeping situation, unfortunately, I don't feel. I feel he'll look at, I was having this debate with somebody the other day, and it kind of, I had to pull out of it because it was grinding my gears, really. They're talking about, bringing Frankie de Jong in and playing as a six, as a defensive midfielder. I acknowledge he's played there on occasions for Ajax, although it wasn't what you would class as a straight six. It wasn't a straight CDM. It was more of an operating eight who played with a deep role and was able to carry the ball because he had another eight sitting alongside him. But we were talking, I think personally, and we've been crying out, we need a specialist in that area. And so for me, I think he'll look at the midfield. It depends how he wants to utilise Donny van der Beek, and what he does with him, what he thinks about Fred, what he thinks about McTominay. McTominay, for me, goes just to a squad player. And how he utilises Bruno. Because the key element is, we had this issue with Pogba and Bruno, clashing all the time. And I think if you bring De Jong in, you're going to have Bruno and De Jong going like that, just clashing. So you need a specialist, and James can tell you who I think is the best fit for us, because I talk about him all the time, and that's Brozovic from Inter Milan.
That's never going to happen. You need to give that one a goodbye. I think he's signed a new contract.
Wait, Stu, can I quick question? Wouldn't you? How do I explain? Okay, if and this is all hypotheticals, right? If we get a De Jong, and if you go back and a lot of Ten Hag's quotes, a lot of them, it would seem to me that De Jong is going to be the guy that the team flows through, right, and gets the ball. And like what you said, the Bruno, I totally understand that. To me, and I've always speculated this, if he gets a De Jong and he's got a Donny, I'm not saying Bruno's not going to be in the team, but it's very hard. That looks like to me he's trying to recreate that midfield he had before. That's just in my opinion. I might be wrong.
You're right. You're right. You won't fit Bruno and De Jong in. You're right.
And that's just the way I'll put in the chat, like there's So when De Jong plays, and even when he played at Ajax, he literally was like a centre back collecting the ball from the centre back sometimes, and then driving. And he's that guy that makes the assist before the assist. You know what I mean? And Bruno will have to, like what Donny done, a lot of off ball work, and that's the, you know, it's all hypotheticals right now because we haven't got De Jong. So, but to me, it screams like this: if you get a Timber and you get a De Jong, who we're linked to, and if you're getting pressed, for example, by the opposition, you have De Jong who can beat the press and Timber who can beat the press. That's another option. And then you get a centre midfielder, another that's next to him, that's composed, that can play that sort of DM, that has a higher defensive output than a De Jong.
That's what you need. It's what you need to play alongside him.
Yeah, and then I could. It's very hard. It's very hard for me to see Bruno, even though I've said it. Bruno needs a De Jong, someone that will drive up the field and then give the ball to him. But it's just hard. To me, it just looks like he wants to recreate that midfield again, that sort of dominated big teams in Europe. I might be wrong, innit?
Well, look, I tend to agree with that. So what I would do, and I've said this before, I would look for the more priority position, which is a bit more of a defensive minded play before you go for somebody like Frankie de Jong. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I've never said he's a bad player. What I'm saying is I just think you've got to find the defensive side of it first and then look to the flair stuff. What you've said, though, is the interesting part about Frankie de Jong. Because he came deep and almost took the ball, I don't know, 20 yards off the goal line, i.e. just outside the D, people assumed he was a holding midfielder. But he isn't. All he was doing was going deep to collect the ball. And he was the first phase of play. Now, usually, a defensive midfielder would be the first phase of play. He'd be the one that would be getting the ball from the centre half or the goalkeeper, whatever, then progressing it to your Bruno, and then progressing it up to the front three. Well, that's why people have got confused with De Jong being a holding play. He's not a holding play. He just collects from deep. So I thought it was a good spot, that. Not many people picked that up.
He's what you call the Italians call a regista. A regista.
Yeah.
That's what he is. He's a regista. What? Before we move on, a quote. This is what Ten Hag says: the quality of your players. This is years ago. The Ajax team. The quality of your players will decide how you will play, and with what system. We had to find a way to make Frankie function in the best possible way. Ten Hag said, "You saw his incredible talent, but where do we have to use him to get the best out of him and his talent?" Eventually, I decided to play with 2 number 6 players on the pitch. Once I did this, you saw how much better he became on the pitch and how much better he made the whole team play, and especially the attackers. So I've always said this: the Dutch see a number 6, not how the British see a number 6. It's totally. You saw it the other day in the Netherlands game. He was the lone 6. Do you know what I mean? That the way the Dutch see 6 is not how other people. That's why I always tell people: just remember, managers have different opinions. I've always said that than how other people see the game.
But anyway, Brozovic. I'm gonna get a Brozovic. He's my man. Do you know, he's 29. He's a bit old for us, but oh man, he'd be amazing.
No, he's a quality player.
No, he's a great player. At this point, I think obviously as a defensive midfielder, that kind of age worries me because of it. It's kind of similar to what we did with Matic a few years ago. But we're going to come into incomings later anyway. I think ultimately at this stage there's a lot of players that are leaving, and there's going to be a lot that needs filling. So do you all reckon? Obviously, there's going to be a few transfers coming in, of course. But do you think these academy lads that have been on loan? So I'm not necessarily bringing up James Garner here because I think there's quite a debate that he's going to get quite a lot of experience, whether it's at United or elsewhere. But I'm talking about the other players. So obviously we've said about Chong already. I personally think he'll be leaving, but the likes of Chong and Ethan Laird, Dylan Levitt, do you think they might actually have quite a sort of shoe in the first team next season, along with the likes of Mebry and Fernandez and all those other players that we've already got? James, go for it.
I think it'd be a risk. I don't know if any of them are good enough for that jump yet. I think you look at
even Garner.
You look at Garner when he plays for Forest, and he does the exact same thing as Frankie de Jong. Obviously not as well as he does, but he thrives with someone who's competent defensively next to him. James Garner isn't a ball winner by any means. He can win the ball back, but that's not a Premier League, Champions League level. You cannot use James Garner as your single holding midfielder.
Not in the Champions League, James.
Yeah, but I'm talking for next year. But yeah, don't remind me. But yeah, I'd be concerned. Obviously, with this, I think we need to get a stable team sorted to then fit him in as well. I think that'd work best. It'd be very, very harsh on him to drop him into this in the middle of a rebuild where he doesn't really know his place. We don't really know his place either, and you just sort of hope it works out for the best. Obviously, I'm looking at comments now. He probably is better than McTominay on the ball, probably off it as well. But for his development, he'd probably have a positive impact on us, depending on who we put next to him. But for his own development, I think we see a much better James Garner if we loan him out for maybe one more season, maybe even two. Just make sure he's absolutely ready for that step, because we've seen it, even with Rashford, we thought he was ready for that step, and now he's fallen off a little bit. I'm not sure. That probably has nothing to do with him being introduced so early, but there's not been many players recently that we've brought into this starting 11 from a young age, and they've gone on to do really, really well. Obviously, the only one who looked like they might possibly do it was Greenwood, and we know how that's ended up. So I'd want to be more sure. There's no doubt he probably could, but I just don't want to risk anything with him, because he can be so good. That's so obvious to see.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Greenwood situation, I think it's kind of best to just ignore and avoid at the moment. Obviously, we know how good of a player he is, but effectively we should leave it there before everything comes out. I mean, I have my opinion on it, and I don't personally think he should play for United again, but we'll leave it there. Mr. Tom, what do you reckon? I've just seen a comment here saying that Garner's better than McTominay. Would you take McTominay out and bring Garner into his position? And maybe, should we not sign whoever else, would you be happy with that?
I'm 50-50, I'll be honest with you at the moment, with Garner. And
I can understand why, to be fair. I think ultimately at this stage, I think it does wait and see who we sign.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm half of the same impression.
That's because if obviously we don't know if we're going to get two midfielders, we might. So we don't know what situation we're going to be in. And I don't want to be in a situation with Garner where we get two starting midfielders and then he's going to be rotating a squad as a squad player when he could have been loaned out. Do you know what I mean? And play a full season and to help his development. And that's more important to me, because if I'm taking it back to the Fraser Campbells, the Chris Eagles, then we went to Adnan. We could have helped their development a lot better. To be fair, there's so many players that I think at the time was probably more talented than some of the players that come through now. Like the Adnans, he was a talented boy, but bad development. So it's about getting the development right now for him. And I feel like full season in the Premier League, and then then maybe next year we're talking. He's a starter. He's going to get into the team as a starter. Right now, it's all like 50-50. I want to be in a place where I can say, yeah, he's number one in that team. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like if he went into the Prem for the season, the whole world's going to see it. And that's what I want for him. It's about development. And we've not been good for a good long while, man, at Man United with development of youth players. And that would be key for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one way of finding out, though. Surely is bringing him into the team, I guess. But I understand what you mean. I do think it sort of depends on who we sign. I mean, Notch has just said, obviously, Donny's coming back. But we've lost two, haven't we? But we've lost Matic, Mata, Lingard, and Pogba. So it really does depend on the transfer market, I think. Stu, do you think Garner should come in for McTominay, or? Because I think a lot of people have got quite a serious opinion with McTominay, and I think a lot of people are starting to appreciate Fred a lot more than McTominay. And I can see why. I think especially after this season, I don't think McTominay has been good enough at all. And I do wonder, is McTominay the one looking over his shoulder more so than Fred for Garner?
I think the lads have summed it up, really. Both of them have summed it up, the right way. For me, he's got to go out on loan. Now, the obvious place would be he goes out to Forest, but Forest are going to have to do some serious recruitment to make any kind of waves in the Premier League and staying in the Premier League. So I think that's a difficult place for Garner to go to. Although Forest know him and he knows Forest, when you're in a rebuilding side, which is what James said, I think it's very, very difficult. And it kind of backs up my point really about if you bring 5 or 6 new first teamers in, it's a very difficult start to the season. The first 1 or 2 games might go okay, but then the next 3 or 4 might be quite difficult. So it's a very, very difficult position for Ghana to be in. If he goes to somewhere like Brighton, he's going into a ready-made Premier League setup. He's going into a place where a manager would understand his skill sets and to be able to utilise them. And if Basuma stays, I think there'll be quite a good pairing. We don't know what's going to happen with Basuma. Rumours are that Basuma is going to look for a move, but I think Ghana and Basuma would be excellent for Brighton. So I think for me, that's the best place for him. With regards to McTominay, when you're looking at Ghana and you're looking at McTominay, you've got a Scottish international footballer here on the one hand and a loanee on the other. So whether you like McTominay or not, it doesn't stack to switch the two. You've got to have a bit of common sense, I'm afraid, on what you do with them. But I thought both of you guys have summed it up absolutely brilliant in both your ways. I agree with Mr. Ton and I agree with James perfectly because, you can't... You're right about destroying the confidence of a young player and it completely gets overlooked. You see it all the time, don't you? Bring in Garnacho, bring in Medjbury, we should start them. Well, as you both have said, James is talking about Rashford. Okay, well, what happens if he has an absolute appalling game against Manchester City at the Etihad or Anfield and he gets absolutely destroyed by the press? What do you do with these young players? We've got a brilliant centre-half out on loan in Mengi at Birmingham. He's been absolutely superb this year. But we're not even speaking about these guys, and it's the right thing not to speak about them just yet. So I think you're all right, lads. You both your points were absolutely spot on.
Do you know what? That shocked me. I forgot about Mengi. I think Mengi replaces Baye.
He's got a chance, Mengi.
I think Mengi is the kind of player that will come into the squad, will play the handful of games, but will have to be utilised properly. But ultimately, I just want to come on to McTominay again. Obviously, he has got a lot of stick, but I think there's he's had 4 managers now, 3-4 managers, all use him, all play him. He's obviously doing something right. Now, whether that's because we haven't got better, whether that's because he works so hard in training, ultimately the only people that matter are the manager.
You've done it again. You've said exactly the right thing. We haven't got better.
Yeah, well,
as a team, as a first 11, we haven't improved, have we? So
no, ultimately we haven't. But at the same time, we've had 4 managers, and each manager, Mourinho, Rangnick, Solskjaer, and what seems to be Ten Hag, because there's absolutely no talk of him even leaving. It seems to be the case of, he wants to reward hard work, and if McTominay is one of those players, he'll be another manager that he uses. But obviously, I said before we'd come on to incomings, I tried to get the lads to pick a couple of players that they think that will come in, realistically come in. I've had a thought, and before everyone steals mine, I'm the presenter, and it's my show. I'm going to tell mine first. So, Ben was lovely enough to give me my show, and he's going to regret it. It's no Karthik anymore, but it's my turn now. I think I was looking today, actually, and we mentioned before about 29-year-olds and midfielders. But for where we are at the moment and the competitions that we've got to play and where we expect to finish in the league, would anyone disagree with me that Christian Eriksen on a free wouldn't be a good signing, James?
No, spot on. I think United and shrewd business don't go hand in hand, but, where better place to start than Christian Eriksen? Unbelievable signing, if you ask me.
Well, I think with the likes of Donny, Bruno and Eriksen coming in, then Medjbury in the academy, I think that's 4 attacking. Well, I say attacking, but that's 4 good midfielders that should do enough for us next season, surely. I just think on a free, I think that the risk to reward ratio is definitely worth it. Mr. Ton, would you go with Eriksen as well? Do you think it's something worth looking into?
I definitely, once again, I sort of predicted this one because when he was obviously training in recovery, he was at John Ajax.
Well, it was it was Ten Hag's Ajax he was training with, wasn't it?
No, it was the sort of like the reserve team sort of, but it was still in and around, if that makes sense. So he's a quality player, man, and he's a competent on the ball safety first, possession sort of footballer. It doesn't surprise me, I'll be honest with you, on a free. It doesn't surprise me. When you want, regardless, like what we just talk about McTominay, but when you think about it, you want sort of like for like or similar sort of players. If now you've got the Europa League and you need to switch it up, you don't want the midfield to be so indifferent, if that makes sense. So it would make sense to have him in there if we're still chasing, the other players we are chasing as well. It does make sense logically to me. There's no issue. I want him personally.
I would go with Eriksen in a heartbeat. If you remember when we played Brentford, I was talking about Eriksen and
Yeah,
Matip.
you was definitely
influence
praising
both of those had on the game. I know I keep coming back to Frankie de Jong, Mr. Tom, but it means you don't get de Jong. You won't. We won't.
I think you still would. I think
they're two completely different players, though, Stu.
No, you wouldn't get him though, because then you've really got a problem with Bruno. Then a massive problem with Bruno, because you're absolutely right. They are two different players, but what that means is Eriksen, by the way, let me be clear about this. Eriksen and de Jong could play together perfectly well, because Eriksen would sit a lot deeper. So let's be clear about that would work. But then you got the Bruno issue. There's no way you can play Eriksen, de Jong, and Bruno. It's never going to happen.
But we don't know if Ten Hag 100% fancy Bruno. No one. Do you get what I'm trying to say? This is the part where when I saw that link.
I disagree with that, mate. Bruno was quite literally only just being given a new contract. There's no way that wouldn't have been given a green light if Ten Hag wasn't involved in that.
If you look at the Glazers and how they run, and the Matt Judge and the Woodward sort of extending deals, it doesn't surprise me. Trust me.
But Woodward was gone by then, and
I know, but I'm
saying,
announced. But there's still the methodology around what they do, and some people call it Glazeronomics, is still lingering in the scenes, basically.
I think I get that. Being skeptical about it and about the Glazers is something that I'm still well on board with. I just think 100%. I think the Bruno contract was definitely given the okay by Ten Hag. I think Bruno is still a brilliant player, and I think. But my point being,
I would take Eriksen, because Eriksen plays the way that I love a footballer to play. He has transformed Brentford, completely transformed Brentford, and when you look at what Mata did for us, he transformed our play for the final 5 or 6 games that he's involved. I think Eriksen would be a first teamer for me. Yeah, an absolutely phenomenal player. I'd take him all day of the week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you all agree with me. It's something I hear a lot that people agreeing with me about football.
Well, it was quite.
I'm usually right.
It was quite an easy one, wasn't it, lads?
Oh well,
you can't disagree on Eriksen.
I wasn't. All right. Right. Who do you want, James? Mbappe.
Oh, no, not. I don't want to give away our club president spot like that. But. Don't know. I don't want to take the obvious ones, because with anyone.
Take the obvious ones. Go on. You don't have to go for one player. Pick a couple.
Well, we need an actual DM, don't we? We're assuming get Timber and Frankie in. You need an actual DM with available ones. I'm seeing Wolves.
Everyone's
linked to
available
Paulinho
at the right price.
Exactly, but Wolves linked to Paulinho at Sporting Lisbon and getting no resistance from anyone else is just ridiculous to me. He is a serious player. And I banged on about him last year, and I think he's still going under the radar because he plays for a club in this Portuguese league, and he doesn't score goals or get assists. So you're not going to really notice him, are you? But I think, anything under £50 million, I think gets him realistically, which is again a bargain. 25 million. He's good on the ball. He's very, very physical, which was a big problem with Van der Beek apparently. So that eradicates that issue. A good ball winner as well. Defensively, very disciplined. He's not going to be like Fred and McTominay, where you see them pressing on the edge of the opposition penalty box and leaving that big gap. I just think he ticks all the boxes. You're only really going to have competition from Wolves for his signing, and he's not going to be that expensive, realistically. So, he solves a big problem in our squad. I think you go for him.
I've heard a lot of good things about him, but I think that one of the issues was. I think he was linked with West Ham a couple of seasons ago, and they wouldn't pay the release clause. And wasn't it like something like 40? I mean, that's still a good price, 47 million. But is that was that an issue? I'm sure I heard that a couple of years ago, and that was back then. And if West Ham were a bit and ahhing, what is he good enough for United? I mean, I personally think he's a great player, but I mean, I know there's a lot of. I mean, if you think about it, Man United fans hearing a player from Portugal who can't score or assist, certain people from certain YouTube channels may have a go at that. Certain ones from certain YouTube channels who work for certain radio stations might say bad things about him. I don't know if you would agree, but I think that would be a shrewd signing who would do the job he's intending to do, instead of, he'd pop up with a goal a couple of times a season. But if he's protecting the back line and it gives the likes of Maguire, Varane, Lindelof a lot of protection, I wouldn't be against that kind of signing at all. Is that your pick then, Polina?
Yeah, I'd say so. People don't like him because he's got like 50 pace on FIFA, and suddenly that makes you a bad player. But he's the perfect Matic replacement in my eyes.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Mr. Son? Do you think Polina will be good, or do you know too much about him, or not enough, or what?
I'm more on the side of the other fence of, and I've been saying this to a lot of fans for a long time. Don't be surprised Ten Hag doesn't go for the traditional sort of defensive mid, if that makes sense. More of a midfielder that has a high defensive output, but is very competent, that can also drive and pass, and that's why I think we was linked to Angolo. It didn't surprise me because we was linked back after sort of Ajax finished their league, and when Ten Hag was doing a lot of his interviews, that's when the first early links came out, and it's only but no one catched on to it. So it tells me, and the Neves links as well that I've seen this week, so it tells me he might want to have a more fluid function in midfield than just a natural sort of defensive midfielder, if that makes sense. So I personally don't. I feel like having the players that, if we are to get the players we're linked to, we need a more fluid midfield, man. And I've said this. I wouldn't want a sort of just a defensive midfielder, in my opinion.
Well, I could probably see that. I think I would pick up one point there. I'd say I think I'd be one of those on the wrong side of the fence, if you can call it the wrong side of the fence, when it comes to Kante. I think it's a little bit late for him. I think when we were morons and decided to give Chelsea 40 million for Matic, so Chelsea could give 30 million for Kante. I mean, that has got to be something insane that United have done. But I think at this stage, I think we're a bit late for Kante. I think there's a couple of niggling injuries that are starting to chop away at him, and I think the boat might have just sailed for him. I could be wrong. He could bounce back for Chelsea next year, but I don't remember seeing him be too brilliant this year. I think he's.
No, I agree with you, but it's the profile for me. If that's similar sort of profile,
I know you weren't saying go for Kante, but what do you reckon, Stu? I mean, I know you say a couple of good things about Polina.
Polina is decent, but I'd be a bit more left field actually, and I'd go a bit close to home, and I'll bring in Højbjerg from Spurs.
Never going to happen. Ever going to happen.
But that's who I bring in. I bring in Højbjerg from Spurs. People took the piss out of.
I'd bring Roy Keane in, mate.
Yeah, people took the piss out of Tottenham when they spent the money for Højbjerg from Southampton. He's been absolutely brilliant for them. Absolutely brilliant. He's exactly what we would want. He's got Premier League experience. He can progress the ball and he can tackle. He's a very, very, very underrated. Look at these. It straight away. No, you don't know football. Then this is the problem with fans. You say in left field now. No, fucking watch him before you start saying no. Watch what he can do, how he can play. He's brilliant. He's a very, very good, competent footballer. This is the problem. I say all the time, and it fucking annoys me more than anything. You're not always going to get a centre midfielder. And Mr. Ton's right. And the same, by the way, with James and Polina. Exactly the same. Doesn't create any chances, doesn't score. He's not there to create chances to score. He's there to progress the ball after winning it. Okay, that's what a CDM does. I know it because that's what I used to do before I went back to centre half. So I know how to play the game. And Polina is exactly the same. Polina is exactly the same. Kante's good. Kante has got a goal in him, though, hasn't he? Kante's got a goal and he's got an assist. Højbjerg might have a goal in him occasionally. Can't shoot for toffee. but he can get the ball and he can progress it, or he can get the ball and he can run with it. And that's why I like James's shout at Polinia, you know. And I knew Højbjerg's left field, but just look at what he can do and how he operates on the pitch. He's not a Granit Xhaka, you know, who's going to get sent off. He'll get his fair share of yellow cards like a good CDM does, but he's got a head about him. Son loves playing with him. Absolutely loves it because he picks out Son, he picks out Kante when Kante comes deep. Very, very good footballer. Striker-wise, I wouldn't go for Nunez. I'd go for Andre De Silva from Frankfurt. And my reasoning for that is I just think he's an all-round better balanced player. He's outscored Haaland twice, I think, hasn't he? I know, obviously, Lewandowski's outscored everybody, but I'm pretty sure a couple of seasons ago he outscored Haaland. I think he might have got about 28, 29 goals in all competitions this season just gone. A very, very good player. So I'd be, yes, actually, he does ball watch. I wouldn't disagree with that, but he can tackle and he can get in. Højbjerg, sorry, but those would be my two. Look, left field, and I'll take it, but I wouldn't disagree with Polinia, by the way. I think, Mr. Ton, I tend to agree with Cal. I probably think Kante's missed his window. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just the profile for me. I might be wrong. But...
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
I think, do you know what? Being honest, I don't know too much about Nunez. From what I've seen of him, he's looked good, but I've also had the comparison of a Lukaku type player. I think that's quite harsh, if I'm honest.
Sorry?
I think it's quite harsh on Nunez to compare him to Lukaku anyway.
They're talking about his touch, aren't they? His
I mean, I think
18-yard box play, I think.
I still think it would be quite harsh. I think he's, you know, I can see what people mean, but I think it would be harsh. My worry with Nunez, I think, is his pressing stats haven't been too good. In terms of sort of leading from the front, putting the pressure under the ball from the front. And that's something that I know Ten Hag would like. So it does. I am curious as to what the thinking is with bringing him in, but then having Ten Hag the manager, something must be given there. I don't know if anyone watches Statman Dave, but Statman Dave does quite a lot of stuff. And he said about a striker. Ben's right. There is a Nunez special coming up on the channel as well. So if you want to check that out when it comes out, I'm sure Ben will be lovely and comment that in the comments, let you all know when that comes out, because I can't remember. So please do that if you can, Ben. But yeah, I've lost my point now. But yeah, Statman Dave said there's a guy in, I think it's Italy, about Scamacca. He's called. He's 6'6". Scored quite a few important goals.
He's a good player.
Very good player. Yeah, he's a very Ibrahimovic type player. I think he could be a good shout, and he wouldn't be too expensive either. Obviously, he'd be learning under Ronaldo, because it looks like Ronaldo will be staying next season as well. I've just in our private chat, and I'm going to out him, and I want everyone in the comments to mention this as well. Would anybody on this show right now, and if you say what I don't want you to say, I'm going to kick you. Anyone take Dybala on a free? Stu?
Not for me. Not for me. For no other reason. I think he's always flattered to deceive. I think he's an exceptional player. He really is. He's talent-wise, brilliant. His first touch, is brilliant. He reminds me way too much of James Rodriguez in his stature, and I think he wouldn't adapt to the physicality and the pace.
Hang on, Stu. Apologies, the Nunez special's out now, so go watch it now if you want. Carry on, Stu.
It is good. Yeah, it is good.
I have not seen that. It's been a very busy platitudes, so
But there's absolutely no denying he's a brilliant footballer. But I think he's better based in Europe than he is in the English Premier League. That's just my opinion. It's not for me.
Give it a month and he'll be at Spurs. What do you reckon, Mr. Tom? Do you reckon he'll go to Spurs?
I don't know if he's going to end up with. I think he's going to stay in Italy personally. I wouldn't even take that serious him coming to United, because the only season, and I get me. I try to always take my personal preference out when I think about what Ten Hag's gonna, think about a player. Because if you look at it, apart from the 18 to 19 season, that was the only time he used the false nine. Before that, he always had a target man. Even at his old clubs, had a target man.
Yeah, great, 100%.
So
yeah, he has.
That's why when people say about the Nunes thing and his touches, I do understand all of that and I get all of that, but he scores goals. And one of my good mates, there was an Adito, sent me a video from Y Scout. I don't know if people know about Y Scout, and showed me Haller's touches at Ajax and what he does. Like, because you can get information about it. All his touches are just in the box. When you go to all the data anywhere else on the pitch, there's no data. All his data for his Haller's touches is in the box. So that tells me he just wants someone just to get on the end of things. The profile of Dybala will be just, it doesn't fit from what I know of the way Ten Hag, it doesn't fit.
Quite like De Silva. De Silva's got a bit better play outside the box, but he's dangerous inside the box as well. So
yeah, I think ultimately at the minute there really is. I mean, he's more of a false nine, isn't he, Dybala? I don't personally think we should be going anywhere near
false
him,
nine. Yeah.
James, were you making it as a point to talk about, or do you believe we should go for him?
There's a reason I put a question mark after it. I think there's worse signings you can make. I don't think I want him purely because, like you said, the profile probably doesn't fit and the wages are going to be ridiculous at this point. But the only thing that swings it in his favour for me a little bit is look at the depth we've got up front. I think Dybala's got experience playing all the way across that front line. He's obviously got incredible technical ability, which Ten Hag wants in wide players, if you could play him out wide, which he has in his past. And on a free, I think even as a striker, you can't expect Ronaldo to play 38 league games a season and Europe as well and all that. So I just think if worse came to worse, there would be worse signings to make. I think it could be like a Cavani where he comes in, no one's really that bothered, and maybe he surprises us. But I'm with you lot. I think he definitely shouldn't be a priority. But if we're desperate towards the end of the window, I think there's worse players you could bring in than Dybala personally.
So James, are you saying like you get him and like play him out wide?
Just where
cutting in on the left, on the right, cutting in on the left.
Yeah, whatever. Ten Hag could find a place for Dybala in this team. I mean, he played Tadic out wide for a long time, and Dybala and Tadic are pretty similar in that they can finish and they're very creative players, not particularly quick. So there would be space for him in the squad. Whether there is definitely better players we could sign that fit the mould better. But the point I'm making is, if worse came to worse, if we were sitting at deadline day, he's still not moved anywhere. You're not paying a fee for him. If you can get him on modest wages, which I don't think we can, that's another downside to him. But he wouldn't make this squad any worse, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you backed your point up, even though everything you said was wrong. But I can't imagine us. I can't see us going to him at all. I mean, I get what you're saying. The experience and him being in each position could be useful. And ultimately, it stinks of a Man United signing, doesn't it, with an Ed Woodward? But that's the kind of thing we're hopefully trying to move on from. But again, it is United and it is the Glazers, and I hope we don't really go for something like that. But you never know, do you, at this stage?
If you had said one thing, you would have persuaded me. If you had said it's because he's a left footer, you'd have persuaded me. Because right now, we don't have no left footers really that can play out in the wide and drifting. We don't have none.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention he is also left footed, which we don't actually have that many of. So.
Yeah, well, as well, I just want to say this as well. I didn't want to... we aren't completely avoiding the whole defensive thing, but there's so much talk of De Jong and Timber at the moment that I think I kind of wanted to just bring something else into it, because they seem to be our first two targets at the moment, and a big area of the squad that needs looking at is the attackers, and I think the forward line in particular, striker being one with the links of Nunes. But another thing that I wanted to bring up was this guy, Nkunku. I think he should be our first signing. I think we should be, if we're talking about signing anyone for 75, 80 million plus this summer, shouldn't it be this guy?
Where would you play him?
Probably on the right. Would you disagree?
Would you not, if you're going to go for someone left
field?
field, then wouldn't you go for Muriel, if that's how you pronounce it, from Atalanta? What's he got? He's got 26, hasn't he? 27 goals this season.
I think it's just because I want a left footer. For me, I just want a left footer. We haven't had a left footer sort of winger since, if I'm correct, Di Maria, if I'm correct. I can't remember us buying a sort of winger that was left footer. I can't. I'm trying to. I can't think of anyone. And we just lost 2 left footers, Matic. I can't think of no one personally that's left foot. Oh, and number 11. Number 11, we just lost another left footer. We don't really have many left footers.
Yeah. I don't think 11. Well, yeah, forget him.
Guys, he's not Voldemort. You can't say his name.
It is quite interesting that we have lost that balance of the left foot. You're absolutely right. And we don't appear to, nobody coming through. I don't think that's left-footed that I can think of.
Do you know what? That's not a bad shout, is it? I think Mane leaves. I could see Salah going as well in the next 12 months. I can't see him getting a contract.
Yeah, no, he fits them perfectly.
Yeah, I think there's a big period of transition coming at Liverpool as well. And ultimately, I think I know a few of the fans over the horrible side of town don't really like their owners, but I think we'll see how much they like their owners over the next couple of years, given how much they might need backing, considering how much that front three might change. I know they've got Jota and I know they've brought Diaz in, but I still think if Mane and Salah were to leave, they'd still need more. So Nkunku could be a very good shout for Liverpool, actually. This is where United need to put their ideas up. Right, okay. Well, we're coming up to an hour, guys. So is there anything else you want to talk about? Like, how's your day been or out like that?
Does anyone think we're going to get any fullbacks?
So, did you watch the Europa Conference League final? Because that Malacia that we did lose with, stonking game. Quality.
Personally, I think we should be getting a fullback. I think Timber might be right back and centre back. I personally think we should be going for fullbacks as well, but at this stage, I can't see it. It's looking like the low staying.
I'm not so sure we'll get Timber, I don't know if we'll get Timber. I don't know if we'll get Timber. There seems to be a little bit of... I think he'll stay.
Yeah, there seems to be a little bit of doubt with him, doesn't there? So
I think he'll stay.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does stay at Ajax. I think it's more his World Cup chances. I genuinely think. I wonder if he's worried about coming to United because Van Gaal is the Netherlands manager.
Yeah,
there'll be two things. Sorry, Mr. Tom. There'll be two things. A, what if he can't adapt and he's not starting? And it's stranger things have happened, but it could well be the case that he doesn't start because he can't adapt to the Premier League. He gets injured, although he could get injured at Ajax, etc. I'm not saying that, but I do believe it'd be ideal for us because I think he'd be brought in as a right back. By the way, I don't think he'd be brought in as a centre half. He'd be brought in as a right back that can play centre half and vice versa. But no, I think he'll be looking at. It's the wrong year for some players. You see. You are risking your World Cup ambitions. It's interesting.
You know what? Usually they wouldn't be though, and I think FIFA moving this tournament is something that
fucked everyone over.
That will really be remembered. I think. I mean, it shouldn't ever happen again. I mean, even glossing over all the human rights abuses that have happened there, that's not a bad shout. Lamptey, right back. I think Lamptey would be a great player at right back for us.
Walker
another one at right back. I mean, I think we need another right back. I think Luke Shaw will go at left back. I think we might see Williams come back, be understudy to Luke Shaw, but I think we definitely need a right back. Yeah, I think we definitely need a right back. Right, I'm going to finish on something really quick for you then. Right, we'll go with one position, one signing. Who would you bring in? James, go for it.
Defensive midfielder, Palhinha.
Mr. Ton.
This one's tricky. A left back. It's just a left back. I don't care who it is. There's a talented left back. I'll be honest to you. A left back.
Okay, interesting. And Stu, what do you reckon?
I'll bring in Eriksen all day long.
What for what position? Like the number 10
midfield.
sort of thing?
Midfield.
Just anywhere in
Yeah,
midfield.
just
throw
throw
him
him in
Any
there.
midfield.
I don't care. I'll just
Throw
bring
him in there.
Eriksen in. I'll just bring Eriksen in. You know, he could well be the difference. Just himself. He could well be the difference. Just himself for us. Strange as it seems. Look what he did to Brentford. Was the
Right, well,
difference.
I'll do something. Well, yeah, I think he probably kept them up, really, didn't he? I'll
He
go with
did.
something different then, because you have all said a different position. I'll go Nkunku right wing. That's what I'll say. But yeah, thanks for everyone that's tuned in tonight. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for getting involved. Make sure you all get over to youtube.com/allforunited. Put a like on the video as well. Follow us on Twitter as well. There's always loads of polls and comments and stuff on there as well. But really appreciate you coming over tonight. Go and subscribe if you haven't already. Go and like the video if you haven't. And, you know, go tell Ben how good of a host I am. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot. See you later, lads.
Peace out.
Ta-ra.